So as Le Mans winners go, the Mazda 787B is without doubt the most popular. It's the first Japanese car to win at Le Mans, it's the only car to win Le Mans with a rotary engine, it had an active Formula 1 driver at the wheel, and it was so loud it ended one of the driver's career. One of the driver's careers. Come on Microsoft Word, which one is it? Give me that blue line. But after it took its win at Le Mans, the rotary engine was banned, and somehow over the next 30 years, sweet little lies have been associated with the car. The two most popular being, it was banned for being too loud, and it was banned for being too quick. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Tell me lies, tell me lies. I love Fleetwood Mac. The 787B was active during the manic period of endurance racing, and probably the most popular period of endurance racing, called Group C. So between Group C, Group B rally cars, and the 1400 horsepower BMW qualifying engine time bombs in Formula 1, the 80s was as mental as it often sounds. It was a Guns N' Roses concert at 200 miles an hour. When the FIA introduced Group C for 1982, the cars were limited to a minimum weight of about 800 kilos and a maximum fuel tank of 100 litres. Racing distance was then limited to 1,000 kilometres, except for Le Mans obviously, and a restriction of 5 fuel stops in that 1,000 kilometre period, so roughly 600 litres per 1,000 kilometres to try and stop the teams putting so much into engine power, and that in itself had been creeping up at worrying amounts to worrying levels. I've misread the script, but let's just keep the flow going. Then in 1983 an additional category was created for privateers called Group C Junior, which restricted the cars to 330 litres per 1,000 kilometres and allowed for more engine types. Then in 1984 this was called Group C2, which I guess is equivalent to the LMP1 non-hybrid category that has recently died. And with the diversity of the manufacturers, the diversity of the engines, and the fact that these cars were achieving monstrous speeds, it all meant that Group C was competing with Formula 1 for attendances, and the crowds at Le Mans were massive. And with this, the team started pushing the envelope, sometimes a little bit too far, in the eyes of the governing body that is. Peugeot turned up to Le Mans in 1988 with what they called Project 400, a money sink designed not to win Le Mans but go faster than any other on the planet had gone on a road course before. 400 stood for 400 kilometers an hour, otherwise converted to 250 miles an hour, and this car hit a top speed of 407 kilometers on the Mulsanne, which at the time had no chicanes. Peugeot then claimed the record as 405 and used it to market the 405 road car, and the car itself blew up after like 7 laps or something ridiculous like that, but to Peugeot, doesn't matter, went fastest. And that's why we have chicanes on the Mulsanne now. But despite the FIA making changes to turbo pressures and trying to alter the rules to get Porsche to leave after they and the customer 956s dominated, with one year, 1983, locking out all but one position in the top 10, which, you know, mental statistic that they, like Peugeot, use for marketing purposes. You may have seen the Nobody's Perfect marketing campaign from 1984 that you can actually get printed on a t-shirt, and I need to buy one. So after Peugeot's top speed stunt and noticing that endurance racing was now as popular as Formula 1, the FIA, with no doubt some pressuring from Mr Eccleston and Mr Mosley, changed Group C to be a Formula series. They were going to change the rules so that turbocharged monsters like the 956, the 962 and so on were going to be reeled in, and teams using engines like those used in Formula 1 were going to benefit. But really the plan was just to get the manufacturers out of endurance racing and into Formula 1 by using the same 3.5 litre V8, V10 or V12 engine choice that they had in Formula 1 following the end of their turbocharging era in 1988. And as always with these kinds of things, people got priced out. It actually worked out cheaper to run 16 rounds of the Formula 1 World Championship than it did to run 6 rounds of the World Sports Car Championship, as was now called the WEC. And then for 1991, anything that wasn't a 3.5 litre V8, V10 or V12 was going to be banned. And when teams turned up to Le Mans, Peugeot, running the new formula, were the only Group C car to qualify because everybody else suffered reliability issues because the engine formula was untested. So the FIA said, okay, you can run your 1990 cars with your 1990 engines, but you're carrying 200 kilos of ballast for the privilege. So the 1990 cars were designated C2, and Peugeot ran as C1 as they were the only team that were running these new regulations. And Peugeot was allowed to start first and second despite only being 3rd and 8th fastest in qualifying. The Mazdas were around 11th fastest in qualifying, or there or thereabouts. So they were 3rd and 8th fastest in qualifying, but the only cars to qualify. What? Can someone explain that for me, please? But the whole thing was moot because the 1990 cars quickly made mincemeat of the 1991 cars before the Peugeots blew up just before nightfall. So it left the three Mercedes cars at the front, and the lead alternated between Jean-Louis Schlesser and a young German called Schumacher, with the latter setting the fastest lap for the actual 24 hours. Porsche, Jag and Mercedes were all carrying 200 kilos of ballast and struggling. Karl Wendlinger crashed his car at the Dunlop Bridge and needed a new rear wing, and it was Mercedes against Mazda, who had the benefit of being immune to the ballast through a loophole in the rulebook. Rotary engines that the Mazdas were running were exempt from the 200 kilo ballast, so they were basically running unweighted. So they at least had a modicum of pace compared to the Mercedes, who had to basically drive the car harder to build gaps. But if those 1990 cars ran with no ballast, Mazda would have been nowhere, and their results at that point had been totally anonymous. Then the Mercs had reliability issues, which is something you don't often hear in 2021. The 31 had gearbox problems that cost them 9 laps, the 32 damaged the engine mounting running over debris and had to retire, and the number 1 had the alternator bracket shear and snapped the water pump drive belt. So the super noisy Mazda was put into the lead and won the race by just over 2 laps. The second car was the TWI Jaguar in second place. Johnny Herbert, Volker Weidler and Bertrand Gachot were Le Mans winners, although Herbert never made the podium because he was too busy puking his guts out from some dodgy food he ate during the night. The next time an active Formula 1 driver would win the 24 Hours of Le Mans would be 2015 when Hülkenberg did it. And then for 1992 the new 3.5 litre formula came into effect, preventing Mazda from running their insane sounding rotary engine. The TLDR is that reliability and fuel efficiency, along with a dose of everything falling in line at the right time, won Mazda the 1991 24 Hours of Le Mans, which effectively makes it the unicorn of rotaries, to be honest, because fuel efficiency and reliability and rotary tend not to go together. It was by no means the fastest car, since the car's best result that year besides the win at Le Mans was a 5th place at the Nürburgring at the next round of the World Sports Car Championship. So why do people believe this myth still today? And it is incredible how many forum posts you see with the question, why was it banned? One of the first responses is often, it was too fast. In the Gran Turismo games, it is apparently one of the fastest cars in the game according to Car Throttle's article on the subject, so maybe that's got something to do with it. Or just rotary fans going to be rotary fans, I'm not sure. It is one of the biggest urban myths in motorsport, along with the Switch Suzuka poll, which I did about a week ago now. V12s banned in F1 in the 1990s. They weren't. The V12 was banned in the early 2000s along with the V8s. Everybody just switched to V10s naturally. And all turbo engines in F1 in the 1980s were 1600 horsepower. They weren't. Well, I mean, they were, but, you know, like qualifying trim, they were like 1200 upwards, but you know what I mean. The only truth to the Mazda 787B is that it was loud. And by God, it's loud. If you ever watch footage of it, it makes one hell of a noise. It kills people. It could kill people. It's that loud. It's like that nuke scene at the end of Resident Evil 3. There are reports, and they need confirming, but it's probably another one of these, you know, urban myths type of things, that there are reports that the marshals at Tetra Rouge would radio down the Mall Sound to warn people that the Mazdas were coming because they made such a racket. And Volker Weidler actually had his hearing damaged so much by the car he had to retire from racing. But was it too quick? No. Sorry. It was all made up. Although a similar thing happened in New Jersey about 25 years ago. I'm Jonathan Fricks. But at least Formula 1 got its wish. Sauber quit endurance racing to join Formula 1 with Mercedes backing. TWR entered Formula 1 to join up with the Benetton team, and Tom later had his fingers in other pies as well, and he took with him to Benetton some bloke called Ross Brawn, and then convinced Benetton to hire that Schumacher kid. Jean Todt left Peugeot in 1993 when Group C died and started work at Ferrari in 1994. By 1997, Todt, Schumacher and Brawn were all in the same room, and then they went on to dominate the sport. Mazda never achieved success again, although under the new hypercar regulations, rotaries are now unbanned, but whether anyone will actually try it in hypercar remains to be seen. Mazda later produced a concept car as the spiritual successor to the 787B called the Fury, which sounds like a bloke from Birmingham saying Fury. The only prototype was destroyed by a fire in 2008. So this has been basically a TLDR of why the 787B was banned. It was always going to be banned. The myth about it being too fast is exactly that, a myth. But have you learned something about that car today? Are you one of these people that believed it was indeed too fast? You can tell me you've learned something by clicking like on this video, and for more like this you can click subscribe with the bell on so you get all the latest. Big thanks to the patrons of this channel via Patreon, and if you want to join them or just join the Discord stuff and my other social media, I'll leave all the relevant links down in the description for you. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind. Have a great day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. So until then, goodbye. You go on a bike ride lately? Have you ever been drunk? When did you lose your virginity? How much would it cost for you to spend a night in a haunted house? You believe in magic? When was the last time you tipped a waiter? Is this the way to Amarillo? No. That's false.